you're not a huge fan of rain, maybe not the best place to move. What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all things Seattle related. I'll give you some tea and, the pros and cons of living here. I have lived here for 3 years now. Today is actually my 3-year anniversary, which sounds crazy. I feel like I've lived here long enough now to kind of get the gist of how things work and just what it's like to live here. So I wanted to share them with you, just in case anybody was thinking about moving here and just kind of wanted to know the ins and the outs. So yeah, I'm going to start with cons because why not get the bad stuff out of the way? And a lot of this stuff just comes with living in a big city, and it is what it is. You can't really control it too much. You just got to get used to it. So con number 1, which I think is the most important con and just something to really consider before you want to move here, is how expensive the housing is, and just expensive in general it is. Especially coming from a smaller town where I came from, it is significantly different price-wise here than it is there. I made sure to save up a bunch of money before I moved here, just as a safety blanket. I mean, each their own. Some people just pick up and leave and make it work, and that's totally respectable. I just feel like, everybody's accommodations is different. If you don't mind living with people, you can totally get away with like fairly affordable housing that way. But if you want to live on your own, then you definitely have to consider the prices. And there are ways to get around that. I can make a whole separate video on that too, and how I was able to do it, but that's for another time. The second con I have is the traffic. The traffic, just like any big city, definitely not comparable to like LA or even New York probably, but it's definitely up there. The traffic is quite bad. Pretty much any work hours, you're gonna find traffic. It just is what it is. The city isn't really built to disperse the traffic well, so it just kind of happens, and you have to accommodate. I know a lot of people that will stay at work like an hour later, or just like hang out for an hour later, so that way they're not in the traffic going home, because it can take forever depending on where you're going to. The next con I have kind of goes hand in hand with the traffic, but it's just driving in general isn't great here. I used to have a car. I don't have one anymore. Sometimes I miss it, but sometimes I really don't, because it's just such a hassle, especially if you're going to be driving downtown. Like, parking is impossible. It's also very expensive. It's really expensive in general to have a car here, so something to keep in mind, definitely. It's just stressful. Like, I hate driving downtown. I kind of hate driving in general, and I don't really miss it, but just the anxiety I would get, especially like with the one-ways, and there's a lot of streets that are like only buses from 3 to whatever, and you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna die. If you don't have any trouble with that kind of stuff, then I'm sure it's fine. People get used to it. You have to commute if you have to commute. It is what it is, but me personally, think that overall driving here is just not fun. The next con I have is up for debate. It really is personal preference, but it's the weather. I know some people don't like rain. If you're not a huge fan of rain, maybe not the best place to move. It rains quite often, although I will say it is hyped up way more than it is, because I'm gonna say it's not like when you imagine Seattle. Don't think of just torrential downpour all the time, because that is so rare. 99% of the time it's raining, it's like a mist, which is almost more inconvenient. I think I would rather have it rain harder than just like, especially someone that wears glasses, it's super annoying to have just like a coat of mist on my glasses at all times. But in terms of the amount of rain we get, it's really not that much. It's just kind of constant. And I think more people are referring to the gloom, because the gloom is there pretty much 9 months out of the year, I would say. It's just dark and cloudy and just kind of like sad. You do definitely get used to it, but I'm gonna say if you're coming from somewhere like California or like Arizona where it's sunny all the time, you might have a little bit of a hard time adjusting, at least at first. But like I said, some people love the rain, and sometimes if you're from a place that is always sunny, you kind of want the rain. So it really is up to your personal preference. I don't love rain, but I grew up around it, so I'm used to it. The next one that I have is the homelessness. I would say also, like any other big city, you're gonna see a lot of homeless people. It just kind of is that way because there's a higher population, and in Seattle they do get a lot of resources, so that's why there's a lot of people here. From my personal experience, I can't say that I've ever really had a huge issue with the homeless people. I know that there can be some that are pretty aggressive. You just kind of got to watch out for that. But if you're not used to the homeless, it might be kind of intimidating. But there are places that you just kind of want to avoid. If you're unfamiliar with Seattle, I would say just kind of avoid 3rd Avenue at all costs. Sometimes you obviously have to walk through it, but don't spend time there. And I think if you see it, you will know, like right away, that it's just not somewhere that you want to hang out. Now on to the pros and all the great things about living in this city. The first pro I have is the opportunity. In terms of opportunity, I would say job growth is going to be huge. It's really hard to kind of go up in any sort of corporate job if you're living in like suburban towns. Not that it's impossible, it's obviously not, but just in a place with more companies and just more people, it's easier to kind of grow in your career, especially if you're into tech and you work in tech. This is a wonderful place for that. I also feel like it benefits the rest of us that don't work in tech and just work in customer service or just really sort of any type of job, because there is more population of people. It trickles down to us and we get clients and customers and things like that. So overall, just a lot more opportunities. The next pro I have, this one's kind of more for me personally, but I love that Seattle feels like a big city. Because I mean, it is. It's not the biggest city, but it definitely is a bigger city, especially coming from, like I said, a suburban town where there's no big buildings or anything. It just kind of feels like a small town. It's nice to come to like the big bustling city where everything moves a little bit quicker, and it comes with the cons. Like I said, it definitely comes with more like not so nice people, I would say, but you learn to adjust with that and you almost become one. Not that that's a good thing, but I don't know, it's more exciting. It's honestly more exciting. The next pro I have, which is huge, and just kind of the Northwest in general, is you're surrounded by water and mountains and beautiful scenery. It's super close drive to go on a hike or to just get to a mountain or a lake. It's not too far to get to a beach. It's not going to be the beaches that you see in like Florida or California by any means, but it's still a beach and it's beautiful. The scenery just overall is top notch and it's really hard to beat, honestly. I sometimes forget that like states in the Midwest don't have mountains and things like that, and it's just all flat, and that just sounds really sad. Overall air quality, everything is just so nice here. Speaking of which, another pro that I have is that we have all 4 seasons here, which I know a lot of states have all 4 seasons, but there are some that don't, like places that are hot all year round. We don't get a lot of snow. When we do, it's actually kind of hard because of the hills and everything, but we get snow, we get the springtime with the flowers, we get the summer, and then the fall, which the fall is my favorite. If you're not in a place that has a lot of like green, lush trees, you're not going to have that same experience of fall that we get here, which is so beautiful, seeing all the colors change, and it's just like such a transition. And it's still kind of warm out. That's my favorite part. But the summer overall, summers, you can't beat them in Seattle. Like, you can't beat them in the Northwest in general, but it is so hard to beat summers here because it's warm, but it's not too hot, and it's not humid. And the best part too, that I feel like a lot of people don't realize until they come and visit during the summer, is that the sun doesn't set here until like 10 p.m. in the summertime. So you get so much daylight out of the day, and it's so wonderful. Everybody looks so forward to the summers. You really get used to the dark, dreary winters and springs because summer makes it all worth it, and it kind of trickles into the fall, which is also wonderful. It's just so impossible to beat that. The next pro I have is the food. I think the food is good. I don't know if everybody thinks the food is good, but I think it's good. We're really big foodies, and so we eat out a lot. There is a lot of options. I would say if you're just gonna come and visit Seattle, definitely do your research because you can find some really, really great food, and some of them are not as well known, so gotta talk to your local foodies and find out because there are some really, really great spots. And lastly, my last pro is that you don't need a car, and this goes hand in hand with the con of the traffic. Understandably, since the city is expensive, you might find yourself kind of getting outside of the city. In that case, you might need a car, but there's also, I think, pretty good transportation. I have never had an issue getting to and from somewhere. It's also very walkable, very bikeable. There's lots of bikes, lots of bike trails. Like I said, I used to have a car, and I mean, mind you, my car was dead. It was old and barely working, and so when I tried to drive it downtown and there was hills, I just had to like say a little prayer every time I went up a hill that I would make it all the way up. But yeah, it's just kind of nice that you don't need one, especially when you're in the city. I don't know why people do have cars because it's super, super expensive. You don't need it. You can walk everywhere. You're honestly getting like an urban hike when you walk everywhere because of the hills. So it's just kind of nice that it's not a necessity here. So overall, those are my pros and cons. There are plenty more. I can always make another video of this, but I just thought I would give you kind of a little bit of insight on what it's like to live here, and maybe that changes your opinion of what you had before, or maybe it doesn't. I think I'm going to make another video just kind of giving an overall backstory of why I moved to Seattle, when I moved to Seattle, just kind of the whole story. Let me know if you want to see that. I think I'll make it either way, but you know, it's always good to know if people want to see it. Like always, make sure to like and comment and subscribe, and I will see you in a couple days with the next video. Thanks for watching.